first met Bill Degan in about 1990. My brother and Bill served together in the Marine Reserves. My brother had also been on active duty 7 or 8 years. They were both mobilized for Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and then they served 6 months together. Where I met him was at a large gathering of Marines in Boston. It's something that is traditionally done on the 10th of November every year. Started with about 30 Marines back in the 1980s, and it was probably as many as 1,500 there when Bill was there. But we actually had quite a bit in common, certainly from the same hometown. Both of our dads had served as Marines. My dad served in the Korean conflict. Bill's dad had served in World War II. Both of our families had strong Boston roots, and my dad also was in law enforcement. I think growing up in a place like Quincy, and I'm sure this influenced Bill Degan as well, strong culture of public service. The football stadium that Bill Degan would have played high school football at is Veterans Stadium. When you walk into the stadium, it's got a list of those that have fallen from Quincy, Massachusetts. And so I think as a young man growing up in Quincy, Massachusetts, going into the military was a natural thing. And I think with our family influence, the Marine Corps was a natural choice. My brother had served with him in the reserves, and Bill's father was also a Marine. So meeting him and having so much in common, it was pretty easy to have a conversation. We're of the same generation. Bill was about 5 years older than me, but the Marine Corps that he came into was very similar to the Corps that I joined in the 1970s. I would say that Bill Degan was part of a generation of Marines that actually helped rebuild the Marine Corps after Vietnam. I think a number of individuals that had served in the 70s were committed to making the Marine Corps not just what it was, but what it could be and what they ideally thought it should be. And if you look at the performance of Marines in 1990, I think it's fair to say that they were doing things that the Corps of the late 1970s was probably not capable of. One thing I recall about Bill Degan is how happy my brother was to be working for him. And he had a reputation as a very positive, persuasive leader, someone that just inspired people to excellence. His subordinates would try to achieve excellence really just so they didn't disappoint him. And that's the kind of leader that he was. Even in a very short time, my brother became very close to him, looked up to him really. My brother's about 10 years younger than Bill Degan, and he really looked up to him. And I think the 6 months they spent together being mobilized as reservists in 1990 and 1991, when you're deployed for 6 months together, you really get to know each other very well. And I know that that experience really solidified a strong and a lasting relationship between Bill Degan and my brother Mike. The other thing I recall about Bill, and I'm sure it had a strong influence on him, is the reputation that his father had. He was a Marine, World War II, aviator, known to be a tough guy in Quincy language, and somebody that I'm sure, as Bill grew up, he had a role model in his own home. He didn't need to look very far and wide for a role model. He had his own father, and I have to think that had a strong influence, not only on his choice of being a Marine, but on the kind of man that he was, the kind of husband he was, and the kind of father he was probably very much informed by the example he had with his father. In addition to Bill Degan being inspired by his father to be a United States Marine, it doesn't surprise me that he would choose to serve coming from Quincy, Massachusetts. Quincy lost 48 men in Vietnam, more than 200 during World War II. And the one thing that Quincy, Massachusetts has always done is it's always celebrated service. And so we didn't forget the veterans of World War II. We didn't forget the veterans of Korea. We didn't forget the veterans or the families of the Vietnam War. It's the city of presidents, so public service goes back to the earliest days with President Adams and President John Quincy Adams, and the city has always maintained that same culture of service. And I think Bill Degan was not only heavily influenced by his family, but I think he was also heavily influenced by his community that had shared values.